Welcome or welcome back. If you've been here before, my name is Kayla, and this is my space to talk about all things horror, movies, books, etc., etc. I had fully intended to do this week my review of It Chapter 2 since I just rewatched it. And I have this whole write-up about it, but I have like no spoons left today. And I don't know what that's all about because that's not typical for me. But I already went and it's Sunday. So I went and I did my whole day. I went for a little hike this morning and did some like communing with nature. And now here I am making a video because I wanted to do something for this week. So I had said in the past that one of the things that I'm interested in doing is rereading some of the creepypastas that I was like so taken with when I first read them. And for those of you who don't know, I don't know how you can be on YouTube and not know what a creepypasta is, but if you don't know, a creepypasta, or I should say the word creepypasta. So the word creepypasta comes from the internet slang term copypasta, which is when something like a blurb of text is copied and pasted in a bunch of different places. So creepypasta is the scary story version of that. And originally they started popping up meaning to be like people's actual real life stories about encounters with things that were frightening. And this like random anonymous nature of them was supposed to add to the scary factor that, you know, some random person just posted this on the internet. So what do you think? People just go on the internet and tell lies? It must be true.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
My first creepypasta that I ever read, I was 21, I think. So aging myself a bit. This was probably in like 2010, 2011, on tumblr.com. I was an early adapter of Tumblr. And I remember one of these blogs that I follow started to turn into this creepypasta blog, but I didn't really know. And so she was posting all of these stories and I read one of them and I was like I was really scared. It kept me up that night. And as time went on, I started reading more and more of them. And there eventually was like a repository, I guess, for them, for random people. Anonymous people can like post these stories. And we got some really famous ones like the story behind Slender Man, right? Because it started as a picture. We have Jeff the Killer. Not scary, poorly written, but like became this whole internet meme, and there were a whole bunch of video games about it and stuff like that. The Day with All the Blood, you know, the most famous, obviously the best, inarguably the best creepypasta, The Day with All the Blood, Who Was Phone, classic. But when I was working at a big box retail store, and I hated my job, as most of us do when we work in retail, I would, you know, in periods of time where there weren't a lot of people and there wasn't a lot of stuff going on in the store, hide in either the back room or the bathroom. And I would read creepypastas. And so there were a few of them that I really, really liked. And that's coming from like me and my integrity as a writer. I thought the stories were really well crafted in addition to being scary. And I was really taken in by some of them. And interestingly enough, because this was like 2012-ish, about 2013, interestingly enough, some of my favorites were adapted into seasons of Channel Zero. So Candle Cove being one of them, of course. Chris Staub is fantastic. I think way back in the day, I ended up buying one of his anthologies, which is called Icker Falls, and it was amazing. Search and Rescue Woods, I think, was another one of them that I remember reading on Reddit. She's also a great storyteller. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to read 3 of my favorites from back in the day. So the first one I'm going to reread is called 1999. It's by Camden Lamont. And from what I recall, the summary of the story is about a children's television show who this kid at the time is like enamored with and he writes a letter to the main character, Mr. Bear or something like that, right? It's supposed to, I think, remind us of like Bear in the Big Blue House, which was a hit when I was a kid. And some sinister things go down. I'm not going to read this here because there's a long history of like copyright issues in terms of people doing that. on YouTube. So out of respect for the author, I'm just going to go to a comfier spot in my comfy clothes, and I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to come back and let you know what I think. So I will see you in what's going to be a couple seconds for you. Okay. Hi. Hello. I'm back. I finished 1999. That took quite a while. Admittedly, skimmed through a few parts. Like, I got all of the details. It's not like Anyways, I don't know that this story is as scary as I remember it being. It's good. I have to say that it was written in 2009. So that was 14 years ago. So 14 years ago, I think this was kind of a bit of a more original concept. And I'm thinking like, there are some like really overused tropes in here, but I can't really tell if the tropes existed prior to this story or if the tropes exist because of this story. So this was written by Camden Lamont and was posted on his blog, his blog Slack Lane, I think it's called, from 2009 to 2011. And it's done blog post style. So it really seems as though he is kind of like reminiscing on his experience with this local channel that he remembers being on TV when he was a kid. And the sinister host of the channel, Mr. Bear, which was a man in a bear suit, and finding out that this was, actually a criminal who was harming children. I think it reminded me of, so in 1999, I was 10 years old, and relatable that this kid, all he wanted to do was watch Pokemon, because I'm pretty sure that's all I wanted to do when I was 10 years old. In the 5th grade, Pokemon was huge. And I also remember having one of those very old TVs in my bedroom. Like, it was the first TV I had in my room. And I think only like 4 or 5 channels came in. It had an antenna. And I could hook my Super Nintendo up to it, but that was about all I could do with that TV. I remember like staying up really late at night and watching Saturday Night Live on that and like moving the antennas around so that I could see the picture very clearly. And in my hometown, we did have like a local cable channel, like what is mentioned in this story. And it wasn't sinister. It was boring mostly, to be honest with you. It was what I remember was that it was either like the local telethon that happened every year, or I think they did like these video greeting cards around Christmas time. And then it would just be like a bunch of interviews with local people and like news from local people. So nothing sinister. So Candle Cove, which has a very similar premise, where, it's some people talking on a message board about this TV show that they remember being on when they were kids, about these like puppet characters and the weird, creepy things that they were doing. And, one of the people on the message board eventually asked their mom about it. And the mom's like, yeah, I remember that. It was just you sitting in front of the TV watching static for a half an hour. Ooh, spooky. But that was written after this. So Candle Cove was written in 2012. And like I said, this started in 2009. I think what I like about it is that there's no supernatural element, and it really focuses on something that's scary to me, which is like the monstrous nature that exists potentially in every human, right? So we're talking about at this time when we're supposed to be just being kids and like going to school, coming home, playing, watching Pokemon, like playing video games, stuff like that. This main character, this protagonist, very early on learns about the evil that exists in the world, and his innocence is kind of destroyed by that. And as an adult, he revisits all of this thinking like, I want to solve this mystery and understand what's going on. Well, I think that this story struggles with like giving us too much information. There were bits and pieces of it where I was like, that's not really necessary for me to know, and that doesn't really add to anything. It maybe added in some plot holes. There are some things that didn't make sense, like, why would the police show you evidence when you have nothing to do with this case that's happening, and stuff like that. And just like the whole part about the man who played this Mr. Bear being like a crack addict, being somebody who abuses drugs or is potentially mentally ill or something like that, is Like, come on. And definitely not scary to me, because we don't even need to go that route to find people who do terrible things, even to children. Those people have no excuse. They're excuse, right? Like, not like there's ever an excuse to harm a child, but like, they're not doing drugs. They're not mentally ill. They're just monsters. So what I think would have been better for this is if it was either like pared down a lot, or if it was turned into like more of a full-length novella where we saw this person investigating this and finding leads and finding clues. I think that could have been really interesting. But I don't think it's not like a bad story. And obviously it was like one of the biggest ones ever to hit the scene. So it's not like, it's not, these creepypastas don't have to be Shakespeare, because they're supposed to feel very much like you're just reading somebody's stream of consciousness to make it feel almost more realistic. So it's not like it has to win like the fucking Bram Stoker award or something like that. What I did find out that I don't think I knew was that 1999 was turned into a TV show, I think on Amazon Prime. So I think I know what I'm doing with the rest of my day. So the next story that I'm going to read is called The Diana House. I remember being kind of obsessed with this when I first found it. It was written by Eric Heiserer, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And I think Eric has written for some larger scale projects like movies and television shows. But the Diana House, what was really cool about it was that it was told across different areas of the internet. So there was one that was supposed to be a collection of, the main one was a collection of emails back and forth from different players in the story. There was also a blog complete with like comments you could read and that sort of a thing. So it very much felt immersive and like you were actually reading someone's account of what they've experienced before. I believe it was written in 2004, so quite a long time ago. And the concept of the Diana House and House of Leaves always reminded me of each other. Just this, it's almost like a gothic horror where the house in the story is one of the main characters and plays a major role in all of the events that unfold. So I can't wait to read this again. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm in the middle of cooking dinner right now. Chili is simmering. So I have a minute to give my updated review of the Diana House about 10 years after I found it for the first time. So like I said, this was written in 2004, and it chronicles... Hi, Clover. It chronicles some emails from a man named Mark to his friend Eric about a friend of theirs from the late 90s, I think, when they were like in high school or college or something like that, where they all used to gather together for game nights. And this guy, Travis? Or is that just on my mind because of Travis Kelce? My sister just sent me a picture of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and they are so cute. And Drew. His name's not even close to being Travis. It's Drew. So anyways, their friend Drew, who kind of joins the group of friends late, and he's, as it is, a little odd, but like a fun guy. Get it? He's like a mushroom. Anyway, so he's already a little odd. And he starts house sitting for his stepdad and his mom, and his stepdad is a realtor. So one of the homes that he has for sale or something like that, for some reason, Drew has to house sit, which is like, usually this house is just empty. So that's a little weird. And so he starts to get stranger and stranger, and there's like a dog that he's keeping there that never wants to be inside of the house. And Drew shows up to game night one night and is very echolalia is what it's called, right? He's like saying the same things over and over and over. He's repeating these TV commercials and these like episodes of Law and Order and stuff like that. And everyone was like, stop, you're weird. So this group of friends drifts apart in like the early 2000s, and they'll go their separate ways and they don't really keep in touch. Mark receives a newspaper clipping about a man in another state. I believe this mostly takes place in Texas. In Idaho, Boise, Idaho, a man opens fire on this couple, resulting in their death. Come to find out, this man is Drew, and Mark is kind of like shocked, and he's like, I gotta reach out to the only person that I'm still in touch with, which is Eric. And he goes on to investigate because it was completely out of character for Drew and not in that like, school shooter apologist kind of way. Like, it really feels strange to hear that he would do something like this, and then take his own life as well. What I like about this versus the first story that I reviewed, which also takes place in 1999. My cats are playing in plastic bags, sorry. What I like about this is that it's kind of a slower burn. It feels much more well organized in terms of like how the events roll out and the mystery surrounding everything. And actually, by the end of all of this, we don't even really have a solid answer. We just have clues, and we kind of have to interpret it for ourselves to determine what we think happens. The best part about this is the mediums used to tell the story. So most of this is emails, but later in the story, we have a life journal of a 16-year-old girl who is babysitting in the house that Drew has to later on down the line house sit. Which takes me back because I had a live journal when I was about 13, 14 years old. It takes place in their blog posts on Blogspot. There are AIM chat logs, which again takes me back. This takes place in 2004. Much of the events happened prior to this. This is 2004 and on is when Mark and Eric are investigating this. So I really don't want to give anything away because I think you should read it. I do know that the author intended to pitch this to make, I think, a movie, not a TV show, but it never ended up happening. I don't know if it was in like development hell or something like that. But anyways, I recommend you read this. I used to actually read it like once a year just to revisit it because I thought it was so good. And to give you a little clue as to what's going on here, Dianea, so this story is called The Dianea House. So Dianea is the chemical excreted by Venus flytraps to attract flies. That is all I'm going to say. So that is The Dianea House. My next story and my final story for today that I'm going to read is The No End House, which was made into a season of the sci-fi show Channel Zero. I was not a huge fan of how that turned out, but I'm not really sure because it wasn't like exactly the adaptation. Like, I guess not every show can be as faithful to the original media as Last of Us, because that was like, it was almost like you're watching the game all over again. But so the Channel Zero season, I forget what it was called. I'll get back to you in a minute about that. Was not exactly the story of The No End House, which I really enjoyed the first time I read. So here I am. It's literally an entire week later, and it turns out the reason I was so low energy was because I was getting sick. It's not COVID, thank goodness. Just about through the worst of it, I think. Spent Friday, Saturday, and Sunday just kind of convalescing. Turns out that The No End House in 2023 is really, really long, and I don't remember it being that long. And I think at the time I was like I said, really tired, and I think I had like a meeting to attend, and all I wanted to do after that meeting was just sleep. And looking at how long this story was, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just gonna go to bed. So I've come back to it, and I read the first part last week, and I remember it being just as good as I thought it was when I first read it about 10 years ago. So The No End House, to give a quick summary, this is the summary on the creepypasta website. It always feels so goofy to say that, but anyways. It says the challenge is laid out. The offer is huge. $500 just to stroll through some old house? How hard could it be? Obviously, you could really use the money, so you agree to take the challenge. You stare up at the looming old building, and even before you ask out loud, what's the catch? You know deep down, you already know the answer. The catch is that the challenge isn't to just walk through some old house. The challenge is to walk through that house. You swallow hard knowing, feeling in the pit of your stomach that this house is different. Different in ways you know you probably don't want to know, but which you are about to find out. It's very vague, and I feel like it doesn't get to the idea of the story precisely. I mean, I think the author supplied that summary, but essentially our protagonist, I believe his name is David, hears about this challenge where you can give $500 to complete what he thinks is like a 10-room haunted house. And I think you have to go through it by yourself or something like that. So he goes in, and the first couple of rooms are like no big deal. Like the first one has some cheap haunted house decorations, and they get kind of like increasingly more frightening until eventually he can no longer distinguish reality from the house. That part I think is really interesting. I think it's similar to the one that I just reviewed, the Diana house, right? This kind of almost like gothic idea where a house plays a role. It's a living thing. It's a character. When this first came out, I remember a lot of people speculating that it was a metaphor for addiction, which I think is really interesting. Like the idea that you're kind of stuck in this place, this loop, and it's hard to get out. I think in the TV show, because this was adapted into a season of Channel Zero, I think in the TV show they really used it as a metaphor for trauma. So like the girl, I think, who is the main character in the show, really had to head on confront this trauma that she had been ignoring. I think it was the death of her father. She had just been putting her grief on the back burner, and so she really had to confront this as part of the haunted house to get on the other side of it. I remember that season being pretty good. I liked it. So maybe worth checking out. This story now has a part 2 and a part 3, which is part of the reason why it's so long. And in my opinion, parts 2 and 3 weaken it a lot. I think that there was almost like a tonal shift, if that makes sense. So we switched to our protagonist being David's girlfriend, Maggie, in part 2. And she goes looking for him. So she goes through the house. And it's like we get this whole like spiel of the first couple rooms and what they look like all over again. I don't know why we needed to regurgitate that. I feel like it could have been a very like 1 to 2 paragraph explanation of her experience of those things. And then it could have evolved into how it was more personal to her. But it almost felt like, you know, when your favorite horror movie becomes a franchise and like the second and third installments are like someone took the IP and made it into something else. Like I think James Wan directed the first Saw movie, but not the second one. And so like the first one, I'm not a huge fan of Saw, but genre defining, right? Like a good movie, genuinely. The second one, real goofy, like not directed by James Wan. So that's kind of what it felt like in terms of like, okay, this is the same concept, but what direction are we going in here? This doesn't feel like the same. I don't know. Just felt like something shifted. I'm also, I just finished Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I'm currently reading Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright, and both of those books are so well written, especially Exquisite Corpse, that I think I'm like judging it against something that it's not trying to be. So perhaps that's a little unfair on my part. But I think I said this already, that it's not like meant to win any kind of award. I mean, he got a season on a TV show. The author's name, by the way, is Brian Russell. So it was good enough the concept was good enough to turn into a TV show, and I don't disagree with that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know, I was not feeling it after part 1. I think the ending of part 1, the first time I read it, I was like, whoa, like, damn, I wasn't expecting that. And then we got to the rest of it. I don't know, Brian? Sir? So that was my 3 updated reviews of 3 creepypastas that I really enjoyed reading about 10 years ago. I should also say that I did some like cursory research on the first one that I reviewed, 1999, and I found out that there were some accusations of plagiarism against that author, which is, apparently, allegedly, there was plagiarism of Alan Tutorials, which is YouTube channel, who they create and post some really bizarre, surreal stuff. The author says that his fans included parts of the story because since it's just like taken from the original source and posted other places online, I suppose you could, when you're posting it, add in your own content and no one would know because nobody really knows who the initial author is until they step up and provide proof. I don't know what's true and what's not true. This isn't a drama channel. This isn't a commentary channel. If you're really interested in that whole story, there's plenty of videos about it out there. I watched a couple of them. That's a thing. And I think it's because I had mentioned that it was turned into a series on Amazon on Prime, but I wasn't able to find it. And I guess that's why they must have taken it down. So that's an interesting development. It's always so fascinating to me when these like niche communities have these like big dramas that they're experiencing, like the crocheting community on TikTok having drama. Like what? The creepypasta community has drama. So anyways, if you're interested in that, go look up a YouTube video about it. So yeah, that was my 3 reviews of 3 stories. Tell me if you want me to review more. There are certainly ones that I don't care to read because I never have. But I'd be interested in hearing what your favorites are. And maybe if you reread them, what you think about them now. So yeah. Like, comment, subscribe for more horror-related stuff. And thanks for listening to me babble. Bye.